The year is 1890, and night is coming to the edge of the sea, 30 miles from the nearest harbour, on a shoulder of wet black rock that the tide covers twice a day. A tower stands 112 feet against the fading sky. Its granite is dovetailed, block locked into block, so that the sea cannot pull it apart. Its windows are small and deep, like patient eyes, and at its crown, behind curved storm glass, a lamp is about to be lit, because ships are out there in the gathering dark, and somebody must keep the light. This is history for sleep, and tonight it will carry you through one whole night in a Victorian lighthouse, slowly, hour by hour, with nothing to startle you and nowhere else you need to be. If evenings like this one help you drift off, subscribing is a quiet, free way to keep the lamp burning for the next long night. And that is the last thing I will ask of you. Tonight you will climb the 103 steps to the lantern room. You will watch the keeper trim the wicks and wind the clockwork that turns the great lens and write his careful line in the log. You will hear a storm arrive far below your window and spend itself and go. The light will burn all night, as it always does. The keeper will watch, so the ships may pass and so you may sleep. Settle into your pillow the way the tower settles into its rock. The first hour is beginning now. Every lighthouse begins with a wreck, and this one began with many. The rock beneath the tower has no soil, no spring of fresh water, no blade of grass. At dead low tide it is perhaps 80 paces from end to end, streaming with weed, loud with water draining out of its cracks. At high tide it is nothing at all, a black back just breaking the swell, invisible from a ship's deck until the sea turns white above it. For as long as men have sailed this coast, they have given it the kind of name sailors give to the things they fear, and they have left their masts and their cargoes and sometimes their bones upon it, in fog, at night, in the innocent blue middle of summer afternoons. And so, in the reign of the old queen, the engineers came patient men in oilskins over frock coats, with theodolites and notebooks and a plan that must have sounded like madness read aloud, to build a stone tower on a rock the sea owns for 20 hours of every day. They could work only at low water, in summer, in calm. Some days the sea allowed them 40 minutes. Some weeks it allowed them nothing, and the workmen sat ashore watching the white water where their foundation lay. Each granite block was cut on land to a wooden template, numbered in paint, shipped out and lowered into its place. And each block was dovetailed into its neighbors, shaped like fingers folded together, so that no single stone could be lifted without lifting the tower entire. The courses were bolted down into the courses below, and the mortar was mixed and struck between tides. In the evenings the men rowed home with the flood chasing them off the stones. It took 7 years, 7 summers of stolen half hours, one wedding cake course of granite at a time, until the tower stood complete with its lantern like a jewel in a ring, and the first light was lit, and the rock that had eaten ships for 100 years became, in a single evening, the thing that saved them. The sea has been trying to take the tower back ever since. On the worst nights it throws whole green waves against the entrance door, 60 feet above the rock. The tower shudders, an old, known, measured shudder, like a tree in wind, and stands. The engineers are long dead, and their tower simply goes on doing what they asked of it, night after night after night. The keeper who will climb it tonight was not yet born when the last stone was set. He inherited the tower the way a man inherits his grandfather's watch, wound, running, wanting only care. He gives it that care every day of his working life. We will meet him now in the last of the daylight as he stands at the gallery rail high above the sea, looking west, reading the weather in the color of the sky. His name for tonight is Thomas. He is 51 years old, and he has kept lights for 26 of them. He entered the service as a young man because his uncle kept a harbor light and let him trim the lamps sometimes, and because the sea was in the family, the way brown eyes run in others. His father a coast guard, his grandfather a pilot. He remembers his first title, supernumerary assistant keeper, a title longer than the boy who carried it. And his first station, a fat little harbour tower at the end of a mole, where the fishing fleet came home past his window every evening, and the lamplight and the shop lights of the town mixed together on the water. From there the service moved him, as the service does, every few years, to a great island station where keepers' cottages stood in a walled garden, where his wife Mary kept hens and the children went to a school of 11 pupils, then to a lonelier island, and at last, 10 years ago, to this a rock station, the top of the profession, where no family can live, and the men serve 2 months on and 1 month ashore. He is a principal keeper now. There are brass buttons on his best coat and an embroidered wreath on his cap, and in the drawer of the watchroom desk lies the book by which his whole world is ordered, the instructions, issued to every lightkeeper, its rules numbered like verses. The lamp shall be lighted at sunset and kept burning at full brightness until sunrise. The keeper on watch shall not leave the lantern until relieved. The apparatus shall be cleaned and made ready before 10 o'clock each morning. He does not need to open the book. He could recite it the way other men recite psalms, and privately, with something of the same feeling. 2 other men share the rock with him this month. Samuel, the second keeper, is 40, broad, quiet, a mender of nets and reader of newspapers, a month old. Young Davy, the assistant, is 20, new to rock service, still solemn about everything which the older men approve of, and never say, 3 men, 1 tower, 60-odd nights until the next relief. It is a small world, and it runs on small kindnesses, tea made without being asked, a watch taken early, silence respected in the mornings. The service posts men for years at a stretch. Keepers learn each other like married couples do, and the wise ones learn when to talk and when to let the sea do the talking. Thomas takes a last look at the western sky, high thin cloud coming up in ribs, the light going a soft brass color, the swell longer than it was at noon. He taps the barometer in the watchroom as he passes, and the needle eases down a shade, and he nods to it, as to a colleague whose opinion he respects. Weather coming. Not yet. After midnight likely, he begins to climb, and we will climb with him. An hour before sunset, the ritual begins, and it goes in one direction only, upward. The stair winds inside the tower's granite like the thread of a screw, 103 steps, worn faintly hollow in their centers by 30 years of service boots. At the bottom, the storerooms, cool as cellars, smelling of rope, paint and tide. Then the oil room, where the day's fuel waits in a polished copper can, paraffin now, in these modern years. The old men still call the store the colza room, after the rapeseed oil they burned when Thomas was a boy. Up the center of the stairwell, from top to bottom of the tower, runs an iron tube, and inside it hangs the clockwork weight on its cable, waiting for the night's work. Then the living quarters, kitchen, bunk room, then the watchroom with its desk and log and barometer, and then, up a final ladder stair of brass-edged treads, the lantern room itself. Coming up into the lantern in late daylight is like coming up inside a shell. The great lens fills the room, taller than a man, and the low sun strikes through its curtained glass and scatters soft crescents of rainbow across the floor plates. The keeper hangs his cap on its hook. He goes around the lantern's diamond-paned glazing with his soft leather, chasing the day's salt from the panes. He draws back the linen curtains that have shielded the lens all day, for the lens is a burning glass in reverse, and if it were left bare to the afternoon sun, it would gather all that light to a focus and scorch whatever it found there. More than one lamp has been ruined so, and the instructions have a rule about it, as they have a rule about everything. Now the lamp. It stands at the exact center of the lens, on its pedestal, like a heart in a glass body. A burner of concentric wicks, one ring inside another, each to be fed with oil and encouraged to a flame of the right height and no more. Thomas fills the reservoir from the copper can, measuring what he pours, because every gill of oil is accounted for in the morning's log. He touches his match to the wicks and brings the flame up slowly, because the tall glass chimney above the burner is warming, and glass that is hurried will crack. And a cracked chimney on a storm night is a small disaster with a long report attached. The flame steadies, whitens, stands. He sets the chimney, adjusts the draft, watches it a full minute with his hands behind his back, the stance of every keeper before every lamp since lamps began. And at the minute the almanac appoints, not before and not after, the curtain rounds are stowed, the lamp is burning at full height, and the light of the tower is, in the language of the log, exhibited. Thomas writes it in pencil on his cuff to enter in ink below. Light exhibited 8:14 p.m. Barometer 29.71. Falling. Wind SW. Force 4. Sea moderate. Swell increasing. High above the water, behind 12-foot panes, in a room the size of a bedroom, a flame no bigger than your two hands open together has begun its night's work. What happens to that small flame next, how it becomes a beam that a captain can see from 20 miles, is the story of the glass that surrounds it. And that story deserves a chapter of its own. The great lens is the treasure of the tower. It is worth more than everything else on the rock put together, and every keeper knows it and treats it accordingly, which is to say, the way a verger treats the east window of his cathedral. It is called a first-order lens, the largest class made, and it looks like nothing else human hands produce. A beehive of glass 10 feet tall, built up from hundreds of prisms arranged in gleaming horizontal rings, each prism ground and polished to its own precise curve, each set into its bronze frame at its own precise angle. A bare flame throws its light everywhere, up at the clouds, down at the rocks, wastefully, uselessly. The prisms catch nearly all of that scattered light, bend it, fold it, and lay it flat, so that everything the flame gives off is gathered into level sheets of brightness, aimed out at the horizon where the ships are. A French physicist worked out the principle in the years after Waterloo. By Thomas's time, the great glassworks of France and of Birmingham compete to build ever finer ones, and lighthouse engineers speak of their lenses the way other men speak of racehorses. This lens does not stand still. It revolves the whole 10-foot, several-ton assembly of glass and bronze, turning its panels past the flame so that from the sea the light appears to flash, two white flashes, close together, every 20 seconds. That rhythm is the tower's signature. Every light on the coast has its own one flash, 3 flashes, a fixed steady beam, a red sector, and every captain carries a book in which they are all listed. A master coming up from the Atlantic in the dark takes out his watch, times the flashes against the second hand, finds the rhythm in his book, and knows, not guesses, knows which light stands before him, and therefore where he is, and therefore where the rocks are. The flash is the coast introducing itself by name, and here is the wonder that visitors never quite believe. In the newest towers, this one refitted only 2 years ago, those tons of glass and metal ride on a bath of quicksilver. A circular iron trough holds the mercury. The lens's great float sits in it, and the whole apparatus rests on liquid metal, nearly frictionless, so perfectly balanced that a child's push would set it turning. The service does not permit children on rock stations, so it is Thomas's flat palm at cleaning time that sets 8 tons of optics gliding with no more sound than a breath. Tonight the lens turns as it always turns, serene, unhurried, twice each 20 seconds, laying its brightness on the sea. From the gallery outside, the beams are 2 long white arms swinging over the water. From the lantern room, standing inside the moving glass, it is like standing inside a slow constellation, lights and half-lights wheeling around the walls. soft as the room of a nursery lamp. Thomas gives the brasswork one more pass of his cloth, purely from habit. The lens does not need him yet. It needs him at midnight, and at every second hour, for the humbler machinery that drives it, the clockwork and the falling weight, which are the next part of our night. What turns the lens all night is not steam and not electricity. It is gravity, patiently spent, the oldest engine there is. Under the lens, in a bronze case with little glass windows, lives the rotation machine, a clockwork the size of a sea chest, its gears cut like a cathedral clock's, its governor a pair of brass balls that spin and lean outward and hold the whole motion to its lawful speed. From the machine, a cable runs over a pulley and down into that iron tube in the center of the stairwell, and at the end of the cable hangs the weight, a quarter of a ton of iron, descending the height of the tower inch by inch through the night, and spending its fall through the gears as the smooth, slow turning of the lens above. The weight takes about 2 hours to travel from the top of its tube to the bottom, which means that every second hour, all night, every night, the keeper on watch takes hold of a crank handle and winds it back up. Thomas does it now, to start the night full. 60-some turns of the handle, a steady push and lean, he could do asleep, and has very nearly done so, some dawns. The ratchet clicks its slow applause. The weight rises in its dark tube, storing up the next 2 hours of light turning inside itself like a held breath. Keepers reckon their watches in windings as much as in hours. A middle watch is 2 windings and a bit. Wind at midnight, wind at 2, and the grey will be in the east before the 4 o'clock winding wants doing. When he lets the crank go, the machine takes up its work again with a soft click, and the watchroom fills with the sound that is the tower's true voice, the sound under every other sound of the night. Tick and tick and tick, deliberate as a grandfather clock, but larger, rounder, a sound with bronze in it. Below, faint through the floor, the kettle is beginning its own small song. Outside, the swell strokes the rock, regular as breathing. This is what the tower sounds like when all is well. 3 slow rhythms, none of them in a hurry, the clockwork ticking, the sea breathing, the beams sweeping their silent circle overhead. Machinery that must be fed by hand every 2 hours may sound to modern ears like a burden. To the men of the service it is the opposite. The winding is company. The tower asks something of its keeper, small and regular, all night long, and gives him back the certainty, click by click, that the light above him is turning exactly as the book requires. All well then. The lamp lit, the lens turning, the weight wound. Now the keeper does what keepers do more than anything else in their long nights. He writes it down. The service requires that the log be kept in ink, in a fair hand, without erasure. And if a keeper makes an error, he shall rule 1 line through it and initial it, so that even his mistakes stand honestly in the record. The logbook lies open on the watchroom desk under the lamp, a broad canvas-backed volume, its columns ruled for hour, wind, weather, barometer, and remarks. Thomas sits to it now, in the desk chair polished to his own shape, and enters the evening in the service's plain liturgy, the hour of lighting. The barometer 29.68 now, still easing down. Wind southwest, force 4 freshening, the swell from the west-southwest increasing. In remarks, in his even upright hand, lamp burning well. Cleaned and polished apparatus AM, steamer past E-wood, 7.50, showing proper lights. All well. He reads the sea for the wind column the way the service taught him 30 years ago, not from an instrument, for the tower has none for wind, but from the water itself. At force 4 the waves have grown longer, and the white horses are frequent. At force 6, the crests break streaky white everywhere, and the sound on the rock changes register. And at the top of the scale, which he has seen from this desk, and hopes not to see tonight, the air is so full of driven spray that sea and sky are one grey smoke. A number in a column, and behind it a lifetime of looking. On the shelf above the desk stand the old logs, 40 years of them, brown and salt-swollen, each spine painted with its dates. Thomas takes one down sometimes on slow watches. It is not forbidden, and the service half approves, for the old logs are the station's memory. In them, in inks gone tea-coloured, dead men record the same kettle, the same swell, the same lamp. December nights when the sea ran green over the gallery, a July week becalmed in fog, the bell going day and night, the visit of an inspector noted with visible relief at his departure, and page upon page, year upon year, the same two words closing the same column, the proudest boast the service knows, precisely because it boasts of nothing, all well. There is a philosophy in that log, if a man cared to write it out, though no keeper would. It is this, that the world is kept safe not by great deeds but by small ones repeated, the wick trimmed, the weight wound, the hour recorded, and that a night on which nothing happened is not an empty page, but a full one. Every all well is a ship that did not strike, a family that does not know, and never will, that it might have grieved. Thomas blots the line, closes the book on the ribbon, and stands at the watchroom window a moment. Full dark now. The beams wheel overhead. The first handful of rain touches the glass, softly testing. From below, up the winding stair, comes the smell of toast. The tower keeps its watch, but it also keeps its supper, and 2 floors down, in the smallest kitchen on the coast of England, that is being seen to. 2 rooms below the light, there is a kitchen the shape of a slice of round bread, and in it a stove not much bigger than a hat box, and in front of the stove stands Davy, 20 years old, making toast on a fork with the concentration of a man diffusing a shell. A rock tower's rooms are circles 14 feet across, and every furnishing is curved to the wall. The cupboard, the bench, the table hinged to fold away, the bunks in the room below fitted into the curve like berths in a ship, which is what the old keepers call them, berths, as they call the kitchen the galley, and the stair companionway. A stone tower 30 miles at sea is only a ship that has given up wandering. Everything in this kitchen came out here by boat and was landed by derrick and carried up 80 steps on a man's back. The stove, its coal, the kettle, the tin of tea, the sack of potatoes, the month's mutton, the water in its casks below, for the rock has no spring, and every cup of tea was once a wave-dodging cask swung ashore on a crane. The tender comes monthly, weather permitting, and weather does not always permit, so the service requires stores kept well ahead, and every keeper is a quartermaster at heart, counting tins with one eye on the glass. Supper on the first watch of the night is the social hour of the rock. Thomas comes down from the watchroom. The lamp may be left for supper, the instructions allowing brief necessary absences, and the lens turning on its mercury needs no hand, and Samuel is up from his pre-watch doze, and the 3 of them fit themselves around the folding table, knees companionable in the warm small light of the kitchen lamp. They eat what keepers eat, yesterday's bread toasted, butter from the tin, a hot dish of potatoes and tinned beef that Davy is learning to make and has not yet ruined more than twice, and tea in enamel mugs, tea strong enough to trot a mouse across, the true fuel of the lighthouse service these 100 years. Samuel reads out improving portions of a newspaper 26 days old. There is a discussion, unhurried and entirely serious, about whether the seals on the eastern ledge are the same seals as last month. Davy's examination book lies at his elbow, and Thomas quizzes him gently across the toast. The proper trimming of a wick, the signals for a vessel in distress, and Davy answers well and pretends not to be pleased with himself, and the older men pretend not to notice that he is. Outside, round the granite, the wind is finding its evening voice. The rain comes now in soft handfuls at the little window, and the whole warm circle of the room lamplight, steam from the mugs, the stove ticking floats 60 feet above the moving sea like a lit thought. At 9:30, Samuel goes below to sleep before his middle watch, and Davy washes up singing something under his breath, and Thomas carries a last mug of tea up the winding stair to the watchroom, where the barometer has stepped down again 29.60 now, and the log receives the fact without comment. The glass is falling, the night's real weather is on its way, and the tower begins, in its patient stone way, to get ready. Thomas taps the barometer glass with one knuckle, gently, the way you would wake a sleeping child. The needle steps down again, and he stands before it a while with his mug cooling in his hand, doing the oldest arithmetic on the coast. There is no telegraph on the rock, no wireless. That marvel is years away yet, and no forecast will ever be delivered here. The weather must be read where it is made, in the glass, in the sea, in the sky. The service trains its men in it, but mostly the sea trains them. Thomas has 30 years of nights filed away somewhere behind his eyes, and tonight he consults them, one sense at a time. The glass first, down 1/2 since supper, down 4/10 since noon, not plunging, which would mean a short, violent blow, but walking downstairs steadily, which means a deep system, wind for hours, a long night of it. The sea, second, the swell has gone longer and deeper, arriving from the west-southwest in slow ranks, with a new weight in the way it leans on the rock. The swell always knows first. It is the storm's messenger sent on ahead. The sky, third, the stars in the east still sharp, but the west now shut behind a bank of cloud, with a hard straight top like a seawall, and around the moon, before the cloud took it, there was a wide pale ring ice halo, the sailor's oldest warning. Wind after midnight then, a full gale by the middle watch likely, force 9 or so at the worst of it, and rain in sheets and spray to the lantern. Not the storm of the decade. He has stood the storm of the decade in this tower, and tonight's glass is not that glass, but a serious grown-up gale, the kind the tower was built to shrug at, and a keeper is paid to be awake for. So the tower is made ready, and readiness is all the drama the service permits. Thomas walks the lantern gallery once around in the freshening dark, checking the storm panes in their frames. He tries the gallery door's fastenings and lashes the wooden shutter bar home. Below, Davy carries the day's loose gear down from the set-off brooms, the fishing lines, the tin bath and dogs, the entrance door's 3 great bolts, and checks that the shutters of the lower windows are secured. An extra can of oil goes up the 103 steps tonight, so that no one need fetch fuel in the worst of it. Extra coal to the kitchen scuttle, the kettle filled, the lamps in the living rooms trimmed. In the watchroom, Thomas enters it all in the log in his even hand, glass falling, gale expected. Secured stations, and the entry is as calm as a housekeeper's list, which is exactly what it is. Preparation is the whole of courage on a rock station. A landsman imagines bravery as something that happens in the storm. The keeper knows it is something you do quietly before the storm, in a dry room, with a checklist. When the sea finally arrives at the tower, it will find nothing loose, nothing forgotten, nothing to seize, only granite and shut oak, and a lamp burning at full height, with its people fed and warm below it. At 11:30, the first squall of rain crosses the rock like a brushstroke, and the window streams, and the beams overhead light the falling water into brief silver curtains. Thomas winds the weight up full, hangs the crank on its hook, and listens to the tower a moment, clockwork ticking, kettle murmuring, wind beginning to hum in the lantern's iron cowl. A low organ note, it only sounds above 4/6. All secure, all well. Let it come. It comes the way night things come, not with a crash, but with a change in the pressure of the world. First, the wind stops gusting and settles to work, a long, steady lean out of the southwest that does not let up between breaths anymore, and the hum in the lantern cowl deepens and holds its note. Then the sea rises to meet it. The swell that was breathing against the rock at supper now strikes it. You feel the difference through your feet before you hear it, a soft, deep thud arriving up through 90 feet of granite into the soles of your boots, like a door closed far underground. The spray that was reaching the tower's knees at midnight is reaching its waist by 1. Thomas stands his watch in the lantern room, hands behind his back, swaying easily to a motion only a keeper would notice. The tower is moving. It is meant to. On a heavy sea, a rock tower gives an inch at the lantern, perhaps 2, riding the blows the way a great tree rides wind, the dovetailed courses gripping each other, the whole granite column leaning a hair and returning, leaning and returning. The first time a new man feels it, he goes pale and asks the question with his face, and some kindly older keeper says what was said to him 20 years before. If she didn't move, boy, she'd break. She moves so she cannot fall. After a month, a man stops feeling it. After a year, he misses it ashore and sleeps poorly in beds that stand insultingly still. Now the big seas begin to arrive, the 7th waves, the ones the swell has been saving up. There is a rhythm to a gale striking a tower, and the keeper knows its movements like a concert-goer. The hiss of the wave gathering on the rock below, the blow itself, a huge soft boom with stone in it, the shudder up the courses, and then a full second later, 60 feet up, the arrival of the water at the windows, not as spray now, but as solid green sea, whole tons of it, climbing the tower in a white sleeve and falling away. In the kitchen, mugs swing softly on their hooks. In the bunk room, Samuel sleeps on, unbothered, a man who has heard it before. And in the middle of all of it, at the center of the lantern, where the noise arrives only as weather heard from another room, the flame stands upright in its glass chimney and does not even flicker. That is the strange piece of the lantern room in a gale, the thing no painting of storms ever shows. The lens turns at its lawful speed, serene on its bath of quicksilver, twice every 20 seconds, laying its 2 white beams out into the flying rain. And the worse the night, the more the beams matter, and the calmer the room seems to hold itself around its work. Thomas wipes condensation from the panes and watches the water come and go across the glass, and feels what every keeper privately feels on such nights, and none of them says aloud. That the tower is most itself in weather, that all the polishing and winding and trimming of quiet weeks was for this. That a lighthouse in a storm is simply a promise being kept. He goes down at 11:45 and wakes Samuel with a mug of tea as the sea booms slow time against the granite. The middle watch is about to change hands. Somewhere out beyond the reach of the beams, a collier is running for shelter with her decks streaming, and her master has been watching for this light for an hour. The keeper cannot see her. On a night like this, he can see almost nothing from the lantern rain on the glass, spray in the beams, now and then a deeper darkness that might be the horizon. But the traffic is there, out in it. It is always there. This is a working coast, colliers beating down from the coal ports, deep laden and slow, coasting schooners that run this passage as their fathers did. A mail steamer somewhere to the south, holding her schedule through the weather with the arrogance of steam. Trawlers and luggers long since run home, their crews listening to the same gale from harbourside beds. For every light the keeper shows, there are 100 men at sea that hour who set their lives a little by it. From the deck of the collier, the world is rain, noise and guesswork, and then, fine on the starboard bow, a flash. The mate counts aloud with the water running off his oilskin hood. 2 flashes, and the wait, and 2 again, at 20 seconds. He calls the character to the master. The master bends over the chart in the swinging lamplight, finds the name printed in small capitals by the little star on the coastline, and straightens up, knowing exactly where he is. The invisible rocks arrange themselves around his position like furniture in a room when the lamp is lit. He alters course 2 points to seaward, and the danger that was everywhere is now somewhere astern, to port, passing. That is all a lighthouse does, and it is everything. It turns fear into information. The rules of the road do the rest. Every vessel out tonight carries her lights by law, red to port, green to starboard, white aloft, and every master reads every other's the same way. Green to green or red to red, hold on safely. And the old doggerel finishes itself in 1,000 heads at once. If to your starboard red appear, it is your duty to keep clear. Lights answering lights all night, all along the coast, the shore speaking in flashes, the ships replying in colours, a whole grammar of small brightness, holding everyone apart in the dark. Thomas, drying his neck at the watchroom stove, thinks of none of this and knows all of it. He does not need to see the ships to serve them, any more than they need to see him. He needs only to be exactly where the chart says he is, doing exactly what the book says he does, at full brightness, on time, in character. Reliability is the entire cargo of his profession. Let the night be wild as it likes, so long as the light is exact. Below, the watch is changing. Samuel is pulling on his second jersey and drinking his tea standing up, and the two keepers meet at the watchroom desk as they have met 1,000 midnights. For the small ceremony the service does not write down, but every tower observes. At midnight, the watch changes, in a ceremony of 2 mugs of tea and 4 words. "Glass," says Samuel. "9:40, steady," says Thomas. The barometer has stopped falling, which means the gale has reached its full argument and will now spend the next hours repeating itself before it tires. Samuel nods, takes the desk, reads the last 3 entries in the log, glances at the lamp through the well of the stair, and the tower is his until 4. That is the whole of the handover. Men who have kept lights together for years do not narrate to each other. The log says what is, and the tea says the rest. Thomas does not go straight down to his bunk. This too is tower custom. On the bad nights, the retiring keeper takes 15 minutes in the watchroom chair with his mug, in no hurry, while the new watch settles. They do not talk much. The gale does the talking, working through its middle-of-the-night repertory. Boom of sea, shudder of stone, hum of the cowl, the little silver rattle of rain squalls crossing the glass. Companionship on a rock station is mostly this, being awake in the same room while the world carries on outside it. Samuel came to the service by the other door. Thomas was born to it. Samuel was wrecked into it. 40 years ago, a boy of 8 on his father's schooner, he spent a January night in the rigging of a ship going to pieces on a bar and was brought ashore at dawn by lifeboatmen, the only one of 4 aboard. He does not tell the story. Thomas has it from the service the way the service has everything, quietly, sideways, over years. But it is why, men say, Samuel keeps the cleanest lamp in the district, and why on wild nights he takes the middle watch, the worst one, as if it belonged to him personally, and why, when young hands ask him whether the work isn't dull, he says only that he has tried both kinds of sea, the kind with a light showing and the kind without, and he prefers to be on the staff of the first kind. At midnight, Thomas goes down the winding stair to the bunk room, undresses to his shirt in the dark, and folds himself into his curved berth with the ease of long practice. The storm, from inside a granite wall 6 feet thick, is a muffled orchestra, the timpani of the seas far below, the wind's long horn note above, the small percussion of rain. The tower rocks him, an inch of sway at the lantern arriving down here as the gentlest imaginable motion, the cradle of all cradles, stone. And here is the truth that no landsman ever believes. Keepers sleep best in weather. Ask any of them. any coast, any tower. On flat, calm nights a man's sleep is thin, he wakes and wonders. But in a gale, with the tower singing its deep working note and everything loose long since lashed, sleep comes down like a tide. Partly it is the rocking, partly it is the noise, which is enormous and being constant becomes silence. But mostly, Thomas would say, if you caught him in the rare mood to say such things, mostly it is because the light is lit and the watch is kept, and someone you trust entirely is awake above you, which is, perhaps, the whole secret of sleeping anywhere for anyone. It is certainly the whole secret of this tower. Thomas sleeps. The gale leans on the granite, and the granite leans back. And up in the warm center of the night, Samuel winds the weight at 2 o'clock and trims the wicks and rules a fresh line in the log. Toward 3 in the morning, the wind begins at last to spend itself, and in the easing, a worse thing comes. The rain thins, the seas grow longer and lazier, and off the cooling water a greyness rises, soft as breath on a glass, and closes around the tower until the beams overhead are 2 white spokes swinging in cotton wool. Fog. Wind is the light's loud enemy, but fog is its quiet one, and the only one it truly fears. A gale leaves the beams alone. A captain can see the flash through any amount of clean flying rain, but fog swallows light whole. On a thick night, the great first-order lens, all its prisms and its tons of glass, may carry no farther than a shout. And so every light on a fog coast keeps a second voice for such hours, a voice made not of light but of sound. And this tower's hangs on the seaward side of the gallery under its own little roof. The bell, it is bronze, 1/2 ton of it, cast in a Midlands foundry with the tower's name and year around its shoulder, and it is not rung by hand. Beside it squats its own small clockwork, a cousin of the machine that turns the lens, weight-driven likewise, wound likewise by the watch, and when Samuel hauls the lever that puts it in gear, a hammer draws back and strikes in the bell's appointed character. 2 blows, close together, every 30 seconds, all the hours the fog shall stand. The sound is the loneliest and kindest on the coast, depending on where you hear it from. From the lantern gallery, it is enormous, a bronze shout that you feel in your back teeth, rolling away flat over the smothered sea. From a mile out, muffled to a slow double toll arriving out of nothing, it is to a fisherman feeling his way home, to the master of the collier now far past and safe, simply the tower still talking when its light cannot. I am here, steer accordingly and pass safe. Samuel logs the time the bell began and the state of the fog by its proper degrees for the service grades even greyness, and settles to the strangest watch a keeper stands, the blind one. Nothing to see, everything to hear. The bell counts the half-minutes. Between its pairs of blows the dripping silence closes in. Somewhere a steamer sounds her whistle, long and small, and he cocks his head at the bearing of it like a man listening for a bird. The great lens turns overhead in the smoke-white dark, faithful and nearly useless and turning anyway, because the book says the light burns sunset to sunrise, fog or none, and because fog can lift in a minute, and a light that is burning is a light that is instantly there. 2 bells and the wait, 2 bells and the wait. The tower has changed instruments, but the music is the same music it has played all night, all its life. The patient repetition at exact intervals of a very simple promise. In the bunk room the change of sound has woken Thomas for a moment, the keeper's ear, which sleeps through cannonades and wakes at differences. Bell going, he notes, somewhere below thinking. Wind down. Thick, then. He hears the hammer strike its pair, and the pause, and the pair again, exact as ever, all well. He turns over in the warm dark, and the bell counts him back down into sleep. The lamp, like every living thing, needs feeding in the small hours, and the feeding of it is the oldest craft in the keeper's trade, so old that it gave his whole profession its nickname. Ask anywhere along the coast what a lighthouse man is called, and you will get the same word. a wiki. Twice in a watch, and oftener if the flame asks, the keeper serves the burner. Samuel does it now, in the deep of the middle watch, with the fog pressing its grey face to the lantern panes. The tools of the office wait in their drawer like a surgeon's, the sharp scissors with their little brass tray, the trimming knife, the soft cloths, the spare chimneys nested in flannel. He turns the flame low, never out. The light must not fail even for a trimming, and a lowered flame behind a turning lens still shows and lifts away the hot chimney glass with a folded cloth. The wicks stand exposed then, a ring within a ring within a ring, each with its crown of char from 6 hours burning. Char is the flame's ash and its enemy. Let it build, and the flame goes ragged and yellow and begins to smoke. So the scissors go around each ring in one slow, steady pass, taking the burnt crown off level, level being the whole art. A wick trimmed crooked burns crooked, and an old examiner could look at a flame across a room and tell you which side of the wick was proud by a 1/16 of an inch. The curls of char drop into the brass tray, little black commas of spent light. The oil is topped from the measuring can, and the measure noted for the log. The chimney inspected against the lamp for the faintest bloom of soot, polished though it does not need it, goes back over the wicks, and the flame is walked slowly up again to its full lawful height, white, upright, silent. The whole office takes 10 minutes, and it is performed with the same unhurried exactness at 3 in the morning in a fog, as it would be at an inspection with a commissioner watching, because the keeper's creed, never written, always taught, is that there is no such thing as an unobserved duty. The sea observes, that is enough. The instructions have a word for what all this serves, and it is a lovely one. The keeper is required to maintain through all the hours of darkness a good light, not a burning light, not an adequate light, a good one. Samuel steps back and looks at his flame with his head on one side, the fog bell counting behind him, and what he sees satisfies him. A flame at full height, clean-edged, steady as a painted flame, filling the great lens over his head with its gathered brightness, a good light. He wipes the scissors, closes the drawer, warms his hands a moment at the chimney's column of heat, the lantern room's one small hearth, and takes his tea to the watchroom below, where the log receives, in Samuel's square upright letters, the ancient satisfied verdict of the trade: wicks trimmed, lamp burning well. Between duties, the watchroom offers its quiet furniture: a chair worn to the shape of 3 men, a desk, the stove, the barometer, and on the wall opposite the window, a stout wooden box with a hinged front, which is the tower's library. It arrived 2 reliefs ago on the tender, swapped for the box before it, and it will leave on a tender in a few months more, exchanged for the next. For the service, in its unbending Victorian way, has decided that the minds of its keepers want tending as much as their lamps, and circulates little wooden libraries from station to station around the entire coast, the way other institutions circulate memoranda. 30 books to a box, chosen by some committee ashore, with the committee's earnest mixture of motives. A shelf of sermons and improving works, which stay pristine. A history of the Peninsular campaigns. A manual of natural philosophy. 3 novels, which are read to rags. A botany, an astronomy, a book of voyages. Keepers along this coast measure time in library boxes as much as in reliefs. That was the winter of the box with the good sea stories, they say. Or the year of the box that was all sermons, God help us. Samuel, this middle watch, has the book of voyages open under the desk lamp, an account of the southern whale fishery, read slowly, a few pages a night, the way a man reads when the book must last the month. He reads with his finger, not from want of letters, but from the habit of a man who taught himself, late, by lamplight, in towers. The service is full of such men. It examines its keepers for advancement in the working of lights, in signals, in the keeping of accounts, and many a man who left school at 10 for the boats has sat in a watchroom at 3 in the morning with an examination book and a candle stub, spelling his way toward principal. The lighthouse service has been called the poor man's university, and the joke is affectionate and true. It supplies the two things study wants, and life ashore rarely grants silence and hours. Above Samuel's head, through the open well of the stair, the lamplight breathes with the turning of the lens. Outside, the bell strikes its slow pairs into the fog, and in the pool of the desk lamp, in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night, a man follows whale ships through the roaring 40s at the speed of a moving finger and is entirely content. There is one more volume in the watchroom that belongs to no box, and it is the one Davy will inherit the care of some year, the station's own commonplace book, kept unofficially by keepers dead and living, where the tower's private curiosities are entered. Pressed weed from the great gale of '81, a drawing of a strange fish landed on the set-off, the date, each spring, when the terns return to the eastern ledge, observations of a comet in 3 different hands across 2 months of 1874, the last entry noting, with a keeper's exact sorrow, faint now. Nothing in it is required by the instructions. Everything in it is the instructions' secret fruit, the record of men trained to watch one thing faithfully, who could not in the end stop themselves watching everything. The fog breathes against the panes, the finger moves along the line, the night goes over the tower like slow water over a stone. Every keeper carries one night that the others know not to ask about too often. Thomas's was 19 years ago, at the island station, and on quiet reliefs ashore, by the second glass, he can occasionally be brought to tell it always the same way, always in the same order, the way men tell the stories that matter. It was October, he says, and it had blown hard from the north for 2 days, and on the second night, in the small hours, Mary woke him with one word: rockets. From the bedroom window they saw them, 2 red stars rising beyond the point, hanging, dying, a schooner, driven in past the head, ashore on the sandbar in the white water, her crew gone into the rigging as the seas made a clean breach over her. What happened next happened by list, because the coast had long since made its lists. The keeper's station kept a rocket cart in those years, the Board of Trade's apparatus, drilled quarterly by every able man in the parish, and it went down the cliff road behind 2 farm horses in the dark, Thomas and the farm men, and the young curate running at its wheels. On the beach in the lee of the dunes, the drill unfolded exactly as the drill book had it. The tripod footed in the sand, the rocket laid, aimed high of the mast tops to allow for the wind. The line flaked down clear. The first rocket blew wide. The second laid its line clean as handwriting across the schooner's foreyard, and the men in the rigging got hands to it. And then heavier lines followed the light one, out the whip, then the hawser, until between the wreck and the beach there stretched, sagging and rising with the seas, a single taut road of rope. And along it, one at a time, in the canvas breeches of the buoy, the schooner's people came ashore. 7 grown men, wet through and rope-burned and alive, and last of all because the master would send him first and the boy had refused, and there had been, the survivors said, a shouted argument in the rigging on that point, master and ship's boy, which the boy lost last of all, but for the master himself, the ship's boy, 12 years old, hauled in over the surf with his eyes shut tight, and set down on the sand of the wrong county, and wrapped in the curate's own coat. They lost the schooner. They lost no one. The sea got timber that night and nothing else. The crew were farmed out among the cottages, and the boy slept 3 nights at the lighthouse, in the children's room, and 8 Mary maintained ever after like 2 boys. And every Christmas following, for as long as they kept that station, there came a letter in a slowly improving hand from a port town in the north, beginning always with the same words: "Dear Keeper, you will remember me. I was the boy. Thomas is asleep now in his curved berth, while the fog bell counts the half-minutes above him, and if he dreams, the service does not record it. But this much may be said, and then we will let the story go, as the wind tonight has let the sea go, that men keep lights for wages and for pensions, and because their fathers did, and also some of them because somewhere in a drawer ashore there is a bundle of Christmas letters in an improving hand, and a man who has once hauled a living boy out of the sea on a rope will trim wicks very carefully for the rest of his life. On the shore, 30 miles east of the rock, in a terrace of service cottages with white painted railings, the other half of the station keeps its own watch tonight. The service builds its shore establishments all to a pattern, so that a keeper's family moves every few years into a house identical to the one it left. Same rooms, same railings, same brass door knocker with the service's emblem, and the wives, who do the actual moving, are divided on whether this is a mercy or a joke. Here live the families of the Rock: Mary, 29 years married to Thomas, Samuel's wife Ellen with her 4, and in lodgings up the lane, the widowed mother of young Davy, who has not yet stopped mentioning to her neighbours that her son is in the lighthouse-service on the great rock itself. Thank you. A rock keeper's marriage is a life laid out in months, 2 on, 1 off. The wives keep the shore months and the men keep the sea months, and the household runs, everyone on the coast will tell you, and it is true on the wives. Mary has raised 5 children substantially alone, nursed them through everything children take, buried 1, launched 4, and dealt with the service's paperwork, the service's landlord, and the service's occasional inspecting gentleman, for whom a wife's revenge being subtle, she reserves her very best tea and her very hardest chair. On the parlour windowsill, aimed out at the sea like a small domestic cannon, stands the telescope. It is through this glass that the family keeps its side of the watch. On clear evenings, Mary can see the tower itself, a needle on the horizon, and the spark of the light 2 winks, and the weight and 2 winks, and the children were each taught in turn, held up at the window in their nightgowns. Count with me. There, that's your father's light. There are arranged signals too, sanctioned by long custom. On relief days, the tower flies a flag if all is well, and once, years ago, when the newest baby came, the shore establishment hung a white sheet on the drying line of the end cottage, and the tower, which had been watching that clothesline through the official telescope with entirely unofficial attention, dipped its flag twice, which meant understood and well done, and other things a flag cannot say. Tonight there is nothing to see. The gale early on, and now the fog lying on the sea, and Mary does what the wives do on the blind nights, which is not to look, and to listen instead. Far off, when the wind sits right, the fog bell carries even here a doubled beat, fainter than a heartbeat, on the very floor of hearing. She hears it as she banks the kitchen fire, hears it as she winds the clock in the hall, a keeper's household. The clocks are always wound, and it is not a lonely sound to her, whatever it is to sailors. It is the sound of the tower working. Working means standing. Standing means 3 men warm inside 6 feet of granite, and one of them hers, asleep off watch this hour if the roster holds, with 9 days left till relief. She sets the guard on the fire and goes up, and the house clicks and settles around her like a small moored ship. 2 months on, 1 month off, 30 years. Nobody gives the wives a uniform or a pension of their own or a line in the log. But no light on this coast would burn a week without them, and every keeper says so, and the service in its stiff way, in its own good time, would one day come to say so too. All well on the shore side, the light is lit there too. There are nights in the turning seasons when the tower has visitors, and tonight, as the fog begins to thin toward 4 o'clock, Samuel hears the first of them arrive. A soft blow against the lantern glass, like a thrown glove. It is October, and the great migration is moving down the map. Thrushes and redwings and starlings in their millions, crossing the sea in the dark as their kind have done since before there were coasts to name, steering by stars and by senses no philosopher has yet explained. In clear weather they pass high over the tower, and no one is the wiser. But on thick nights, on smothered nights like this one, the light does to them what it does to ships in reverse. It draws them. Out of the wet dark they come down the beams, dazzled, circling, spiraling in toward the one brightness in a blind world, and they flutter against the storm panes in dozens, sometimes in hundreds, soft repeated blows, wings printed for an instant against the glass. The keepers do for them what keepers everywhere have learned to do. The gallery rail and the lantern's outside ledges are their resting places, and Samuel goes out into the raw, small hours air and walks slowly around, and the birds are too spent and too light-struck to fear him. He picks the dazed ones from the ledges. A redwing weighs nothing, a warm nothing with a heartbeat, and sets them in the lee of the muret wall, out of the wind and out of the beam's pull, where the shadow lets their sense return. Some towers keep a crate for it. Davy, his first migration month, filled the spare oil store with resting thrushes and was late to his watch, and was not on that occasion reprimanded. By morning most will have gone on, dropping off the rock into the grey first light, finding the coastline. Carrying it pleases Davy to think, and no one can prove him wrong. Some dim thrushly memory of a warm stone island that hummed. The keepers will find the few that spent themselves entirely, and Samuel will note the night in the log, as the service asks for the naturalists ashore have discovered that the lighthouse logs, kept in ink at the exact crossroads of the flyways, are becoming, all unintended, one of the great bird books of the world. Numbers of small birds about the lantern from 3.30, thrushes and redwings, fog, and the commonplace book will get a line in the morning, under the pressed weed and the comet. The tower was built for ships, but a light in the darkness does not choose what steers by it. Whatever is out there, lost, moving, small, it turns toward the lit thing, and the lit thing and the men who keep it receive whatever comes down the beam. The fog is lifting now, in slow rags. One star shows, then a handful, then the belt of Orion clear of the cloud bank, like a fleet coming out. Samuel puts the bell out of gear at 3.50, logs it, and in the enormous new silence the sea sounds suddenly gentle, spent, glass green in the beams, the gale's long apology. Down in the bunk room, Davy's alarm clock has gone off under his pillow, where he keeps it so it will wake no one else. The morning watch is dressing. At 4 o'clock the watch changes for the last time in our night, and the light passes into the hands of the youngest man on the rock. Davy comes up the stair 2 minutes early. As he always does, the older men have noticed and approve, and will die before saying so, and takes over from Samuel in the same 4-word liturgy. Glass, wind, lamp, all well. Then Samuel is away down to his berth with his boots in his hand, and Davy stands alone in the watchroom, 20 years old, with the first-order light above his head and the whole sleeping coast in his keeping. Until dawn, he would not trade places with the Queen. He was a farm boy 40 miles inland, the 5th son, no land coming his way and no wish for the mines. And one August holiday at the coast he saw a lighthouse tender working cargo at a quay, all brass and Trinity blue, and asked a question of a man in uniform, and was answered kindly. And 2 years later, after letters and an examination in which he spelled his way with sweating care through arithmetic and dictation, he was a supernumerary, and his mother wept and bought the neighbour's tea. Now he stands his watch by the book because he loves the book. The 4 o'clock winding of the weight, his first task, he performs at 4.00 exactly, counting his 62 turns entering it. He trims the wicks at past, level as a die, and inspects his flame with his head tilted just as Samuel tilts his, an inheritance neither of them knows about. Between duties, he sits to the desk with the service's examination book open at optics, for he is reading for assistant keeper's certificate, and the lens above him is his own private university. The catadioptric prisms he copies out, in a hand you can watch improving month by month down the page, receive the rays which would otherwise escape above and below. And through the eastern panes as he studies, the sky is doing the oldest thing it does, black going blue-black, blue-black going grey, one gull crying somewhere below, then three. The stars go out in order of faintness, the great ones lingering, the morning star standing alone over the water for a long quarter hour, brilliant, like a light of the first order at a very great distance, and the sea comes back into the world edge by edge, grey silk, still heaving slow from yesterday's gale, but smoothed, subdued, enormous, and empty of any harm. Davy watches the almanac and the horizon both, for the next duty is the one he is still ceremonious about. At sunrise, and not a minute before, the light is put out. The instructions give the time to the minute. He stands by the lamp as the sun's rim cuts the sea line, the lantern room filling suddenly with level gold, every prism of the great lens catching fire with ordinary daylight, and he turns the flame slowly down, down to a blue thread, to nothing. The lens revolves twice more on its quicksilver and glides to rest. The clockwork, out of gear, falls silent for the first time in 11 hours, and the tower stands all quiet in the risen sun, its long night's work done, invisible now to every ship and needed by none of them, until tonight. Extinguished 6:42 a.m., writes Davy in his improving hand. Weather clearing, sea moderating, all well, but a keeper's sunrise is not an ending. It is housekeeping. The light is out now, the light must be put to bed, and the service is precise about the order of the ceremony, which the men call without irony, dressing the lamp. First, the lens. The linen curtains go around it, pane by pane, shutting the sun out of the glass honeycomb, for the same prisms that send a flame 20 miles will gather 20 miles of morning sun to a burning focus if they are left bare, and scorch the burner, the paintwork, the wick box, whatever waits at the center. Davy draws them with the care of a man curtaining a four-poster. The great optic sleeps in white all day, a shrouded bell of glass, and the lantern room goes soft and tent-like inside its light. Then the lamp itself, uncrowned and cleaned, chimney off and set to cool, wicks trimmed of the night's char, ready for evening, the burner wiped, the oil reservoir measured, and the measure carried down and entered against the store, gill by gill, in the fuel account, because the elder brethren ashore audit oil the way banks audit gold. Then the brass, all of it, rubbed back to honor, the lantern panes chased free of the night's salt inside and out, Davy on the outside gallery in the low gold light, cloth in hand, the sea breathing quietly 70 feet below, gulls hanging level with him on the morning wind, inspecting his work like small white foremen. Below, the tower is waking in its ordinary way. The kitchen stove is relit, the smell of coal smoke and then of bacon climbs the stair. Samuel, off watch and officially asleep, is heard not to be asleep but rather frying. Thomas is up with the sun by lifetime habit and is at the desk in his shirt sleeves, ruling up the new day's page, transferring the night gale, fog, bell, birds, extinguished 6.42 into the fair permanent record in ink. The night that was become a column of facts. The facts will become the service's statistics. The statistics in some London year to come will become an argument for a better burner or a louder signal, and so even the tower's paperwork, Thomas maintains, is part of the light. By 10 o'clock, the instructions appointed hour, all is to be ready for the coming night. as if the coming night might be the worst the coast has known, and by 10 it is. Oil up, wicks new trimmed, weight wound, lens curtained, lamp dressed, glass polished, log posted. The tower, which cannot rest at night, rests now in its way. Warm granite in the forenoon sun, washing on a line rigged on the set-off, 3 unhurried men, and the long, bright, empty day standing open ahead like a held door. 9 days to relief, the gale gone, the glass rising. All well and meaning it, one last time before we leave it, come out onto the gallery in the risen morning and look down the coast, because the tower we have kept tonight was never keeping the night alone. Southward, beyond the head, on clear nights there hangs low on the water a single unwinking red spark. The lightship on the outer bank, a wooden vessel with a lantern at her masthead, and no engine and nowhere to go, anchored for years above the sands too soft to build on, her small crew keeping their own lamps, their own log, their own fog gong, in a station that does not even stand still. Keepers pity lightshipmen, slightly. Lightshipmen pity keepers, slightly. Both are glad of the other's spark. Northward, on the Great Cape, stands the high light ashore tower on a cliff, with gardens, families, a cow showing one long flash every half-minute, and beyond it, unseen, the harbour lights and the little leading lights that take the coasters over their bars, kept by part-time men, by harbour masters, by one famous ancient widow who has trimmed her river lamp for 40 years and outlasted 3 inspectors, and so on, light by light, past the edge of any one man's seeing, around the whole dark coast of the island, and every dark coast of every island, the chain runs each light with its own written character, 2 flashes or 3, or a steady red, each standing exactly where the chart says, each tended this very night by somebody awake. A chain of small brightnesses around all the lands where ships go, joined not by wire or by signal, but by the simple agreement of the men and women who keep them, that the lamps do not go out. No admiral commands it all. No single mind even holds it all. It is only thousands of towers and ships and river mouths, and thousands of keepers, most of whom will never meet, each keeping one small light exactly and together, without ever once assembling. They have drawn a line of fire around the night sea, and made it passable, made it chartable, made it home. That is what Thomas belongs to, and Samuel, and Davy, and Mary with her telescope, and the bell, and the books in their box, and the great lens asleep in its curtains above us. One tower is a lamp. All the towers together are something for which the Victorians who built most of them had no word grand enough, and so used a small one, the right one, the service. The sun is well up now. The sea has gone a working blue. Far out, the morning's first sail is standing down channel with the tide, passing the rock in safety without a thought, which is exactly, precisely, the whole idea. If the night is the tower's performance, the day is its rehearsal, and the service has opinions about rehearsal. A lighthouse is a machine sitting in the mouth of the thing that destroys machines. Salt is at it every hour, creeping into hinges, blooming white on iron, pitting brass, lifting paint, gnawing at the puttied edges of the lantern panes. Against salt, the service deploys its 2 eternal weapons, and issues both by the tender load, paint and polish. Everything on the rock is painted, always. Not painted once, painted perpetually, in rotation, so that by the time the last window frame is done, the entrance door is due again. The ironwork of the gallery, service grey. The lantern dome, white or that particular service red. The murette, the handrails, the storm shutters, the crane on the set-off. A keeper off watch with an idle forenoon and no urgent duty will, by deep instinct and standing order both, find himself holding a brush. And the brass is a religion within the religion. Burner fittings, handrails on the stair, the clockwork case, the telescope, the very door knocker, all of it rubbed daily back to gold. Inspectors run white-gloved fingers where fingers barely reach. Keepers know they will and get there first. It would be easy to smile at it. 3 men, alone on a rock no visitor may approach without an order, polishing door knockers for nobody. But the men themselves will tell you what it is really for, and it is not the inspector. On a station where the sea makes all the large decisions, the shine on the brass is the part of the world the keeper decides. Order kept in small things is the keel of order kept in great ones. A man who lets the lamproom brass go dull in October is a man who will misjudge a wick in January. So runs the doctrine, never quite spoken, entirely believed. And there is this too. The work fills the hands, and filled hands quiet the mind. 2 months is a long time on 80 paces of rock. The service knew what it was doing when it made the tower endless work. The polishing is also, in its way, the service looking after its men. Once or twice a season, weather serving, the tower receives the service in person. The inspection announced by the appearance of the district tender standing in from the east with the superintendent's flag at her mast. There is a scramble then, but a shallow one, the deep truth of a well-kept station being that inspection day differs from any other day mainly in the shaving. The boat is worked in under the crane. The superintendent comes up in the sling like a sack of important flour, straightens his coat, and becomes at once the most attended to man on the rock. He sees everything by list, and his list is the instructions made flesh. The lamp uncovered and its wicks inspected, the oil account read against the oil remaining, gill by gill, the clockwork run and timed against his watch, the log read back through the quarter, initialed, the stores counted, the bunk room, the kitchen, the paint, the brass, the white glove, at some point, as tradition demands, and the men stand by, in their best coats, formal as churchwardens, while their whole quarter's life is audited, and are beneath the gravity, quietly enjoying themselves. For a good station, inspection is the only applause the service gives. The superintendent finds the oil account exact to the gill, finds the flame trimmed level, finds Davy, questioned suddenly on the fog signal characters of the district, word perfect, and he writes in the visit book, in the driest hand imaginable, the highest praise the institution knows. Station in good order. Then he is slung back down to his boat, and the tender dips her ensign and is gone toward the next light on his list. And Thomas reads the visit book entry twice that evening and says only, "At supper, well." And Samuel says, "Aye." And that is the party. Our night was an October night with a gale in it, and a gale in October is the coast clearing its throat. The keeper's true season is still ahead of it, and it deserves its page before we leave them to their year, winter, when the rock goes to sea. From November, the depressions come in families, one behind another off the Atlantic, and the tower lives for weeks at a time inside weather that shore people would call a catastrophe and keepers call Tuesday. The seas run so high that spray goes clean over the lantern over 112 feet, and green water climbs the trunk of the tower and falls on the set-off like collapsing walls. The entrance door stays barred for a fortnight. The relief is missed and missed again. The tender comes out, stands off, watches the landing smothered in white, and turns for home with the month's mail still aboard, while 3 silhouettes on the gallery watch her go the hardest regular moment in the service. And every keeper's wife knows the shape of it too, from the shore side. Inside, the tower draws itself in like a man in a greatcoat. Days shrink to a grey glimmer between 10 and 3. The lamp burns 16 hours of the 24. The stove never goes cold, nor the kettle quite off the simmer. The men fall back on the deep stores, the tinned meat, the hard biscuit, the last sprouting potatoes, and on the deeper stores of habit, watch and wind and trim and log. Chess with a board whose missing bishop is a cartridge case, The library box read to its last dull sermon, the mending of everything mendable. Speech runs low and comfortable, worn smooth like the stair treads. Men who can winter on a rock together without friction are the service's true elite, and the service knows it and posts accordingly, and the log through it all keeps its terse faith. Heavy gale, sea over lantern, bell just 8 hours, relief not attempted, all well. That last pair of words doing, in a January entry, some of the heaviest lifting of which the English language is capable. Spring, when it comes as a rumour. A first calm relief day in March, oranges in the mailbag, the turns back on the eastern ledge, painting weather. No men on earth greet April like lighthouse men, and at the end of every 2 months' weather, as the service says in all its documents, permitting, comes the day the calendar on the kitchen wall has been quietly serving all along, relief day. It begins the evening before, unmentioned. Kit is packed as if casually. Boots are blacked that were not due blacking. Davy asks twice what o'clock the tender is expected, is told twice, forgets twice. Nobody sleeps quite the usual sleep of the off-watch, and at first light all three are variously at windows, reading the sea like a letter. Swell down, wind at west and easing, glass steady. She will come, she comes. The district tender, punctual over the horizon, growing from a smudge to a ship in a slow, believable hour. The rowing boat works in under the crane. The sling goes down with the relieving keepers, 2 months of another man's life descending in a canvas loop, and comes up with the mailbag first, because the service, whatever its stiffness, is not made of stone. Then the exchange, all forenoon, stores up, empties down, the new men's kit up, the going men's down, the formal handover at the watchroom desk, log signed, oil account signed, stores signed, the station passing from hand to hand on 3 signatures like a well-run kingdom. And then Thomas and Davy Samuel stays this turn. The rotor is the rotor, go down the sling in their shore clothes, and the boat pulls away, and the tower does the thing that pierces even the oldest hand a little. It gets smaller. It becomes in an hour what it is to everyone else, a grey pencil on the sea line with a jewel at its tip, and the men who were its whole population watch it diminish with their mail on their knees, feeling the world widen strangely around them. Ashore, the white railing terrace, and what waits there. Mary at the gate, 29 years, and she still comes to the gate. A month now of gardens, and children's handwriting grown strange again, and sleeping in a bed that does not move poorly, the first nights, missing it and walking with the particular rolling, unhurried gait by which lighthouse men are known in their villages, as if the pavement too might lean. And on the rock this evening, Samuel and the 2 new men will light up at the appointed minute, and the beams will walk out over the water, 2 flashes and the weight, and Mary, passing the parlour window at dusk, out of 30 years' habit, will pause and count and touch the sill and go in to her supper. The watch continues. The watch always continues. That is the entire story of the lighthouse service, and it has no ending, only reliefs. Twice in his 10 years on this station, the rotor has given Thomas Christmas on the rock, and he will tell you, puffing his pipe ashore, daring you to disbelieve him, that a rock tower Christmas is among the better Christmases the coast affords. The service sees to the foundations. The December tender, if the weather has any mercy in it, lands the Christmas stores with the oil, a goose or a joint in a wooden box packed with straw, a pudding in its cloth from one of the wives for the shore establishment cooks, for its absent men as a matter of iron custom, oranges, nuts, tobacco, and the December mail, thick with the year's letters, which are rationed by their owners with terrible discipline, 1 a day to make them last. On the day itself, the watch bill stands, of course. The light knows no feasts, but around the watches the tower keeps the feast in miniature, and the miniature makes it sharper. Paper chains, made by Davy from the wrappings of the oil consignment, cross the kitchen ceiling. The goose goes into the little oven at an hour calculated by 3 men with the gravity of engineers, and is basted by whichever of them is passing, and emerges somehow always right. There are toasts in tea, the service being dry, the Queen, absent friends, said toward the east window and the invisible shore, the service, and Thomas's own custom, glass lifted a fraction higher than at sea tonight. And at lighting up on Christmas evening, the lamp is lit at the appointed minute, with perhaps a half-degree more ceremony than usual, and the beams walk out over the winter sea to keep the only Christmas vigil the tower knows. 2 flashes, and the wait for any soul out there working the coast on the world's most homesick night. Ashore, after supper, Mary lights a candle and sets it in the parlour window facing the sea. It is not a service signal. It is older than the service. The children ask every year, and every year she gives the same answer, so he can see we're keeping our light too. He cannot at 30 miles, as she well knows. She sets it every year regardless. Some entries in the human log are not for reading, but for making. The tower, we said, is one link in a chain of lights, but step back once more and see the fuller truth our whole series keeps arriving at. The light itself is one trade in a whole guild of night watchers, strung invisibly along the dark coast, all awake at their posts while the island sleeps. On the cliff above the bay, in a hut with a stove and a telescope, the Coast Guard watchman stands his own hours, glass sweeping the same water the beams sweep, keeping the count of lights that move for ships' lights travel, and a traveling light that stops or drifts or burns where no channel is, sends him to the rocket post and the telephone-less urgencies of his era. He and the tower cannot speak to one another. They watch the same night anyway, in a partnership neither ever signed. In the harbour town, the night has its whole quiet parish. The harbour-master's man tending the pier headlamps, the watchman on the quay among the sleeping luggers, the lifeboat coxswain whose boots stand always by his bed, sleeping the particular half-sleep of men subject to the maroon's sudden summons. The pilots in their cutter out at the roads, riding the swell in turns of watch, waiting for inbound steamers wanting the channel. Inland a mile, the signalman in his lit box above the silvery rails hands the night mail down the coast, bell code by bell code, lamp by lamp, a lighthouse service of the land, he would say, and neither service would think it a joke. None of them can see more than a corner of the whole. The keeper sees the beams, the Coast Guard sees the keeper's flash and the coaster's sidelights. The signalman sees his rails, and far off through his window on clear nights, the loom of the great light sweeping the underside of the clouds. Each keeps his corner exactly, and of all the corners kept exactly, the safe night is made not by anyone commanding it, but by everyone, in the old phrase of every such trade, keeping a good light. We have spent 5 nights now in this series among such people: the ship's anchor watch, the night streets of Edo, the walls of Constantinople, the star priests of the Nile, and tonight the keepers of the lamps. And they are, you will have noticed, everywhere the same guild under different coats, the ones who stay awake on purpose, to a schedule, by a book, so that the staying awake of everyone else is never needed. Civilizations differ in almost everything and agree in this single arrangement, night after night for 5,000 years. Somebody watches, everybody sleeps. It is the oldest bargain in the world, and tonight one more time it holds. And now the night we have kept together is over, and you may put it down. The tower does not need you anymore tonight. It never needed you. That was the luxury of it. It has its 3 men and its wound clockwork and its oil measured out for tomorrow. Thomas has his log ruled and blotted. Samuel has his bacon and in time his bunk. Davy has his book of optics and his improving hand. Mary, 30 miles east, has heard the postman and the kettle and counted without meaning to on the kitchen calendar 9 days. The gale has gone on up the coast to spend itself among strangers. The fog went out with the tide. The birds that rested on the rail are inland by now, in ordinary hedges being ordinary birds, and the great lens sleeps, standing up in its white curtains, all its hundreds of prisms holding little bent pieces of the afternoon, waiting for the one flame it exists to multiply tonight. At the minute the almanac appoints, a match will touch the wicks again, and the beams will walk out over the water again. 2 flashes and the wait, 2 flashes and the wait, and every ship raising this coast in the dark will take out its watch and count and know where it is. And tomorrow night the same, and all the nights after, for as long as ships come the light exact, the log in ink, the kettle on, the watch kept. You were never asked to keep it. That is the gift of the tower, and it is yours to keep every night. Somewhere out in the dark, on every dark there is, someone reliable is awake, winding, trimming, listening, writing. All well in a fair hand, so that everyone else may do the other thing. Do the other thing now. Let the sea have the sound for a while. It knows what to do with it. Let the light turn without you. You were company all night, and the watch is grateful, and the watch is ended. Sleep then. The lamp is lit. The keeper has it. Good night. The light still turns. You don't have to watch it. The keeper writes his last line. All well, all well. The sea has gone soft under the morning. Let it carry you. Somewhere a ship passes safely because the lamp was kept.